Welcome, dear dreamer, to Driftwood Stories, where the tides of time run deep and ancient winds still whisper through marble ruins and starlit skies. Tonight we turn our gaze to a gentle flame, to a god not of thunder or war, but of fire shaped with care and hands that make beauty from pain. This is a story cradled in myth and memory, the tale of Hephaestus, the divine smith, the maker of marvels, born beneath the weight of Olympus, and yet rising quietly to craft wonders that even the stars admire. So settle into the hush of the evening, let your thoughts grow soft, and follow us into caverns of glowing ember, into the hum of ancient forges, and the warmth of a heart that burns not to destroy, but to create. Your journey begins now. Chapter 1. Beneath the Marbled Skies. Long before the cities of men were shaped from stone, before ships skimmed the wine-dark seas, there stood Olympus, eternal and serene, its peaks wreathed in mists of gold and myth. Here the gods made their home. Marble palaces shimmered upon the mountain-top, veiled in soft clouds that tasted of rosewater and thunder. Divine beings walked its glowing halls, their voices echoing like ancient music, their footsteps light upon floors of alabaster. Every leaf that grew in Olympus whispered a secret. Every breeze carried the laughter of immortals. The air itself shimmered with power, pure and radiant. But perfection, though worshipped, does not always offer warmth. And into this world, bright and cold, a child was born, Hephaestus, the son of Hera, queen of the gods, goddess of sovereignty, of marriage, of measured order. From the moment of his first breath, the boy did not resemble Olympus's gleaming perfection. He was small, quiet, with eyes like molten copper and a foot that turned the wrong way. Twisted, they called it. He limped where others glided. His voice was soft when others sang. In the bright gardens where young gods chased sunbeams, Hephaestus sat beside the hearth, turning over pebbles and ash. Hera looked upon her son with silence. Some say she bore him alone without Zeus. Some say she wished to prove that a goddess needed no king to create life. But when she saw the crooked foot, the soft limbs, she felt her pride catch in her throat like smoke. The other gods offered no comfort. Apollo, golden and glowing, turned away. Athena watched with curious detachment. Even gentle Hestia, goddess of the hearth, gave only a quiet nod. There was no place in the marble perfection of Olympus for a boy who walked like flame, dancing, uncertain, but with a light all his own. So Hephaestus wandered. He traced his fingers along the pillars of cloud. He watched the flicker of torches in the hall of Zeus. He listened to the clink of goblets, the rustle of divine silk. But no one offered him a seat. No one called his name in play. And yet he was not without wonder. He watched how the metal on the god's sandals caught the sun. He studied the filigree on Hera's throne, the way gold curved and danced like sunlight held in place. When alone, he gathered fragments, bits of broken jewellery, a snapped bronze clasp, discarded links of silver chain. He turned them in his fingers like puzzles, as if they were trying to whisper something forgotten. In the quiet hours of Olympus, Hephaestus sat beside the great fire pits, staring into the flames. He was not drawn to their danger or heat. He listened instead to their language, the hissing, the crackling, the low roar of a living thing at rest. He did not speak often, but the world began to speak to him, and though no one noticed, his hands were remembering something. Then, one day, a shadow passed across the mountain. Hera had heard whispers, a godling who limped, a boy who brought shame to the throne, a flaw in her immortal design, and Hera, whose pride was a crown no wind could shake, hardened her heart. They say she lifted the child without a word, her eyes clouded with judgment. They say Hephaestus looked at her, not with fear, but with calm, and in that final moment he tilted his head slightly, not in defiance, but as if listening to something only he could hear. Then she cast him from Olympus. Down he fell, through sky so wide it seemed to hold eternity, down past the mountain's breadth, past the clouds that no longer cradled him. The gods watched from above, silent and unmoving, their eyes unreadable. He did not scream. Instead, he turned his face to the wind and let it carry him, his limbs folding like flame in a breeze. Below, the world opened. Endless sea, glittering like a mirror of stars. He fell not like a stone, but like an ember, not lost, but seeking, and far beneath the waves something waited. Chapter 2, The Fall from Grace. He fell for what seemed like hours, days, or perhaps no time at all. In the world of gods and myths, time is not counted in seconds, but in silences, in the hush between one breath and the next, in the stretch of sky that lies between heaven and sea. And in that silence Hephaestus descended. The clouds parted gently around him, sighing like old curtains drawn aside. The light grew softer, more distant. Olympus, once so tall and gleaming, became no more than a pale shimmer, a memory written in ivory and gold against the high blue. Still he did not cry out. He turned slowly in the air, small limbs drifting like seaweed in tide. The wind kissed his face, brushed his hair, whispered nothing cruel, only the truth. You are falling. The world below approached, not as punishment, but as invitation. And where the sky ended, the sea began, vast, deep, and unknowable. When he met the waves, there was no crash, no pain, only a rush of cold and foam, a tumbling shiver, and then stillness. The sea received him like a secret. It pulled him into its depths, wrapped him in kelp and silence, and carried him gently down, down, to where sunlight faded into dreams. Far beneath the surface, another world glowed. Here, in coral palaces and grottos lit by the pulses of jellyfish and bioluminescent moss, dwelt the sea nymphs, the daughters of Nereus, the old god of the sea's hidden truths. They were gentle, curious creatures, part song, part salt. Their laughter could calm tempests. Their hands wove pearls into nets of silver moonlight. They found the boy in a cradle of sea foam, his eyes closed, his limp foot curled against a bed of soft anemones. "This is no mortal child," said one, her voice like bubbles rising from a conch shell. "No," murmured another, brushing back his sea-soaked hair. "He is touched by Olympus. Yet he does not shine like the others. He glows differently." "He was thrown away," said a third, sorrow blooming in her voice. "Even gods discard what they do not understand." And so they did what the heavens would not. They cared for him. They built him a resting place in a hidden alcove, surrounded by coral arches and slow-drifting fish. They fed him sea-sweet fruits, wrapped him in kelp-woven blankets, and sang lullabies made of tides and whale song. And when he opened his eyes, he did not ask where he was. He simply listened. In time, the boy began to explore. He followed the dolphins, swam with turtles older than memory, and watched the way crabs stitched patterns into the sand. The ocean was filled with rhythm and creation. Every shell was a sculpture. Every current carried stories older than Olympus. But it was the caves beneath the seabed that called to him most. There, beyond coral and clam, lay something stranger, tunnels of black stone, hot to the touch, where fire whispered beneath the surface. Steam curled in slow spirals. The walls glistened with veins of metal, flickering faintly in the darkness like threads of forgotten treasure. Here he felt stillness and something else. A hum, not loud, not sharp, but steady, like a heartbeat wrapped in stone. He traced his fingers along the walls. They thrummed with warmth. They did not flinch at his touch. In their deep, ancient patience, they seemed to understand him. And there, in that secret chamber beneath the waves, Hephaestus lit his first flame. He used what the sea had taught him: coral for bellows, driftwood dried by volcanic heat, stones cracked by time. The fire that sparked was small, but it glowed with promise. It did not leap or roar. It breathed, warm, gentle, constant, and with it he began to make. At first, simple things, shells bound in silver, coral clasps, strands of gold wire twisted into shapes that mimicked fish and flower. His hands moved slowly but surely. The fire welcomed him. The nymphs watched, their songs falling quiet. What they saw in the boy was not just recovery, not just resilience, but creation, purpose rising from silence. "His hands remember something older than pain," one whispered. "He is not broken," said another. "He is becoming." And so Hephaestus stayed beneath the waves. Far from Olympus, far from its high disdain and golden thrones, he found something richer, the beginning of a forge, not one of glory, but of stillness, not a place of war, but of wonder. Above, the gods forgot him. Below, the earth began to awaken beneath his touch. He did not yet know the names of the metals he shaped. He did not yet understand the full language of fire, but already the flame listened when he whispered. Already the world was beginning to change. And though Olympus had thrown him away, he was no longer falling, he was home. Chapter 3. The Forge Beneath the Waves. The forge began not with thunder, nor the strike of hammer against anvil, but with a breath. a soft exhale in the deep, where fire and water held hands in secret. It was in the quietest chamber of the sea caves, where the stone walls glowed from within, and the floor trembled gently with the heartbeat of the earth, that Hephaestus built his first sanctuary. No marble columns stood here, no golden thrones, only stone worn smooth by ancient waters, only warmth, steady, humming, alive. The boy had grown taller now, though still young by divine reckoning. His foot still turned as it always had, but it no longer troubled him. He had learned to walk in rhythm with the sea, to move like the tide, not straight but sure. And within his hidden forge, he found the beginning of his true voice. He started with pieces brought by the sea, a rusted nail from a sunken trireme, a broken coin swallowed by coral, a length of forgotten bronze tangled in seaweed. He took them in his hands, cleaned them, listened to them, because every metal has a memory. Some sang of war, some whispered of trade routes and spice winds, some held sadness, like a ring dropped from a hand that never returned home. Hephaestus did not discard them. He melted them gently over the volcanic vent, coaxing them back to fluid dreams, and shaped them into something new, not for battle, not for show, but for beauty. His hands, once unsure, became instruments of patience. He carved tiny animals from silver, a gull mid-flight, a dolphin mid-leap. He sculpted coral circlets with hidden clasps. He shaped goblets that shimmered with the light of 1,000 pearls, each one catching the flicker of flame like a distant star. His favourite creations, though, were the ones that moved. Tiny automata, no larger than a crab, a fish that swam on its own through brine, a bird that sang when the sun filtered through the water above. These were not simply ornaments. They were little miracles, whispers of life, given shape by hands that had known rejection, and learned instead to make wonder. The sea nymphs watched him work, drawn daily to the glow of the forge. They brought gifts now, not of pity, but of admiration. Oysters with gold-speckled shells, sands from distant coasts, even tears from whales which hardened into beads of strange, translucent amber. To Hephaestus, they were not riches, they were materials. He was not greedy. He was not vain. He was a maker, and every gift was a story waiting to be retold. Word began to spread, not above, but below. Creatures of the deep spoke his name with reverence. A merman wore his bracelets of jet and obsidian. A sea witch used his tools to craft healing draughts. Even Triton, son of Poseidon, came once to watch the boy work. Hephaestus did not bow to him, nor did he boast. He merely offered him a seat by the forge and passed him a cup he had made from mother-of-pearl and polished stone. Triton drank, nodded, and left in silence, but the ocean itself seemed to shimmer just a little brighter that day. Still, Hephaestus felt a longing, not for Olympus, but for the flame itself. The more he worked, the more he understood. The fire within the earth was not angry, it was not wild, it was lonely. Long ago, when the gods waged war against the Titans, when mountains split and islands cracked, fire had risen in fury. But now it slept, forgotten, murmuring in magma beneath land and sea. Hephaestus sat beside it. He placed his hand on the warm stone, and spoke not in words, but with breath and touch. And in return the fire listened. It grew steadier, brighter, not in rage, but in companionship. And so the forge became a living thing, day by day, piece by piece. Hephaestus transformed the cavern. He built walls from cooled lava and polished them until they gleamed. He carved shelves into rock, each lined with delicate tools, chisels of shark tooth, calipers of gilded coral, moulds shaped from ancient shell. The bellows, once clumsy, now sang as they breathed. His anvil rang with clarity, and at the heart of it all, the fire burned on. No longer a stranger, no longer alone. He was not forgotten, not truly. In Olympus, some whispered of odd currents in the sea, of strange lights beneath the waves. Aphrodite, brushing her golden hair, once paused, thinking of a warmth she could not name. But no summons came, no apology, and that too was fine. Hephaestus did not need their gaze, not any more. He had found something greater than their approval. He had found the forge. Chapter 4, Sparks and Secrets. There are forges that roar with fury, furnaces fed by war, built for blades and battle cries. But Hephaestus's forge sang a different song. It whispered, it hummed, not loud, not boastful, but steady, like the breath of a sleeping world. Each morning, if morning it could be called beneath the sea, Hephaestus would wake before the glow of the magma vent had warmed the cavern walls. He would sit beside the fire and listen, not for orders, not for praise, but for inspiration, because the fire had become his companion now. It danced when he brought new metals. It flickered when he hesitated, and sometimes, when a design formed fully in his mind, it flared as if to say, yes, that one. He had begun crafting things no one had ever imagined. A net that shimmered with threads of starlight, woven so fine it could catch moonbeams. A goblet that filled itself with spring water when held in sorrow. A crown of coral that changed colour with the wearer's heart. And stranger still, things that moved, statues that blinked, boxes that opened only to laughter. A tiny stag, carved from copper and pearl, whose legs moved when music played. They were not tools of conquest. They were wonders, not for show, but for joy. Hephaestus gave them to those who visited kindly. A shy sea nymph received a ring that glowed when she was near friends. An old turtle, tired from the journey of decades, was gifted a harness that lightened its weight. He asked for nothing in return, because the act of making was enough. But even the quietest forge cannot remain hidden forever. One day a current changed, subtle but sharp. A ripple ran through the sea, faster than a shark's flick, carrying voices, whispers, not of sea creatures, but of gods. Far above, on Olympus, Aphrodite had received a necklace. It shimmered with shifting colours, impossible to name. She wore it to a gathering beneath Hera's colonnade, and the other gods stopped to stare. "Who crafted this?" asked Athena, her fingers brushing the strange gold. "It appeared," Aphrodite replied, washing up on the shore, tucked in a shell. I simply followed the ribbon of coral tied to it. A gift from no one, or perhaps from someone forgotten. Hera said nothing, but her eyes narrowed. A memory stirred of a boy she had cast from her arms, of limbs twisted, of silence broken only by falling wind. And now this, a necklace no smith on Olympus could replicate, crafted with love, not pride, with tenderness, not thunder. She said nothing, but the thought did not leave her. Back beneath the sea, Hephaestus continued to create. But something new began to press at the edges of his forge. A pull, not physical, not urgent, but like a shadow creeping at the corner of vision. At first he thought it was the call of deeper caverns, new metals, untouched fire, but the feeling was different. A presence, eyes perhaps, watching, not the sea nymphs, not the creatures who adored his work, something older, familiar. Hephaestus ignored it at first. He poured his focus into his art. He created a mirror framed in lunar stone that showed not your face, but your truest desire. He designed sandals that left no prints on sand, a harp that could be played by the wind alone. Still the feeling grew, like a tide pulling at his soul, and the whispers began to reach him. "They speak of you above," said a dolphin, breezing past his cave. "Your name is in the salt," said a crab, clicking its claws in rhythm. Drifting upward, Hephaestus frowned, not in fear, but in knowing. He had been cast down with scorn, and now they sought him for what he could do, not for who he was. He returned to the fire that night and sat without working. The tools rested in their shelves. The forge glowed gently, patient as always. He spoke to it, not aloud, but in breath and thought. "I do not wish to go," he said, and the fire answered only with warmth. It did not command, it did not argue, it simply held him, and for the first time since he had fallen, Hephaestus wept, not for Olympus, not for Hera, but for the part of him that still wished to be seen as more than a mistake. The fire didn't judge him, it simply burned on. And when he rose the next morning, he began to craft something new, not a gift, not a trinket, but a throne, elegant, silent, perfect in its symmetry. It folded in on itself like a blooming shell, and when sat upon, it would bind its occupant, until the one who crafted it willed them free. He shaped it with steady hands. He polished it until it gleamed like forgotten suns. And when he was finished, he placed it in a clamshell boat, bound it in silk made of sea foam, and whispered, "Send this to my mother." Chapter 5, Whispers of Olympus. Far above the sea's embrace, beyond the clouds and the sighing winds, Olympus still gleamed in its golden arrogance. The gods had continued in their divine routines, toasting ambrosia, weaving fates, chasing glory. They had forgotten Hephaestus as one forgets a stone kicked from the path. But gods, even the proudest, are not immune to curiosity. And when the strange gifts began to surface, items beyond even Athena's clever hands or Hermes's nimble touch, the whispers grew louder. A necklace, glimmering with light that shifted like thought. A comb that untangled not hair but heartache, a silver lyre that tuned itself to the sadness in its player's chest. They had not come from Olympus's forges. No smith among them could explain the craftsmanship. There was no signature, and yet the fire in the metal felt alive. Hera heard the whispers. She saw the wonder. But she said nothing until the throne arrived, carried up from the sea, borne on a clamshell barge pulled by seahorses with kelp-braided manes. Its arms were curled like coral branches, its legs sculpted like waves frozen mid-rise. And it shimmered, not with pride, but with patience. There was no note, only an imprint carved subtly beneath the seat where no one would look. Hephaestus, the name she had buried, the name she had thrown away, the gods gathered. "It is a marvel," said Athena, running a hand along the armrest. "Divine in form," mused Apollo, peering at its polished curve. "Sit in it, Hera," coaxed Dionysus with a smile too wide. "It's surely meant for you." And Hera, trapped between memory and majesty, lowered herself slowly into the throne. It received her gently, and then it closed. The arms curled tighter, the seat sank softly, the throne became one with her form. Not cruelly, not violently, but unmovingly. It would not let her rise. There was no pain, no mockery, just stillness, a throne that held, not punished. "Release me," Hera said, but it would not obey. Not until the one who forged it willed it so. A quiet spread over the gathered gods, and in that hush the truth became clear. Hephaestus was not lost. He was not broken. He had risen beneath their notice, not in vengeance, but in craftsmanship. And now they needed him. A messenger was sent. Iris, swift-footed and rainbow-winged, dived into the sea with her robes of light trailing behind her. She found the forge by following warmth, a soft pulsing glow in the deep, like a lantern at the end of the world. There she found him, seated by the fire, polishing a clockwork nautilus. "I come from Olympus," she said, bowing low. Hephaestus did not look up. "It has been a long time," he said gently, not unkindly. "They request your return. For what? Your mother sits in a throne that does not yield. Only its maker can free her." Hephaestus was silent. Then he looked up. Not with bitterness, not with triumph, but with something softer, sadder. "They would have me only for my hands," he said. "And yet," Iris said, "your hands have shaped peace from pain. Perhaps it is time they saw not just your work, but you." He thought long into the night. The fire beside him flickered, and for the first time it seemed hesitant, as if it too feared what Olympus might do to a soul that had learned to glow quietly. Hephaestus touched the flame gently. "You are part of me," he whispered. "I will not leave you behind." And so he did not. When Hephaestus rose to depart, he did not come alone. He brought the fire with him, not in a brazier or torch, but in his very breath, a living warmth that curled around his fingers, that whispered beside his ear. It pulsed through the tools he carried, a hammer, a chisel, a pouch of stardust. The forge came with him, not as a place, but as a promise. He was no longer the castaway. He was the maker, and Olympus would learn what had grown in silence beneath the waves. Chapter 6. Return of the Maker. He rose from the sea like a forgotten song, carried on currents older than memory. The waters parted for him. Fish paused in their swimming. Even the waves, usually so eager to play, held their breath. Hephaestus stood on the shore beneath Olympus, not as a child, but as something new. He wore no crown, no cloak of stars or robe of gold, just a belt of tools at his hip and the quiet strength of fire in his hands. He looked up at the mountain, its white slopes glowing like a challenge. And then he began to climb. The ascent to Olympus was not meant for mortals. Even many gods took the paths of air or eagle. But Hephaestus placed one foot before the other, step after step, his limp tracing a quiet rhythm into the earth. He did not ask the wind for wings. He did not call the clouds to carry him. He climbed, and with each step, the fire within him burned steadier, as if the mountain itself were remembering the boy it had once cast away. When he reached the gates of Olympus, there was no fanfare, no trumpet, no cheer, but the gods were waiting. Zeus stood at the forefront, tall, draped in storm clouds. His eyes were like lightning stilled, his hands clasped behind his back. Beside him, Hera sat still in the throne Hephaestus had forged. Its arms curled gently around her like vines. She did not struggle. She watched. The silence was thick. Then Zeus spoke. "You return, Hephaestus." The smith nodded. "I was summoned." A murmur passed through the gathered gods. They had expected anger, perhaps, or defiance. But Hephaestus's voice was calm, like water warming on a forge. "You have crafted things none of us can match," said Athena, her voice level. "Your skill is divine." Hephaestus said nothing. He turned to his mother, and for a moment all of Olympus held its breath. Their eyes met, not mother and child, but queen and maker. In Hera's gaze was something sharp, not sorrow, but a recognition that stung more than apology. She had cast him away for being imperfect. Now she sat in a throne shaped by that very imperfection, and she knew without question that no other god could have made it. "Do you come to punish me?" she asked quietly. Hephaestus shook his head. "I come because you needed release. I come because I made this, and no creation of mine will be used to bind." With a touch, the throne uncurled. Its arms lifted, gentle as kelp. The seat rose, and Hera stood, free, but changed, not by the throne, by him. From that moment on, Hephaestus was no longer the forgotten child. He was the divine smith, and Olympus, in all its brilliance, began to shift around him. He did not sit among the lords of thunder and beauty. He returned each day to the far edge of the mountain, where stone met sky, and there he built his forge. This one was grander, fueled by the fires he had brought from the sea, stoked by bellows made of griffin hide and stars. It sang louder, hammered brighter, but it still whispered the same truth. To create is to heal. He crafted wonders, now openly, thrones that responded to a god's nature, chariots that rode the wind, jewels that sang lullabies to restless hearts. He made a golden net, so fine it could not be seen unless it moved. With it he caught Ares and Aphrodite in their affair, not to shame, but to remind the gods that even passion requires boundaries. He made automata, mechanical servants of bronze and silver, infused with small slivers of warmth. Not slaves, companions, and above all he made peace. Among the gods there were fewer quarrels, not because of fear, but because, for the first time, they were surrounded by the quiet miracle of beauty shaped by patience. Hephaestus did not ask for admiration. He did not desire thrones, but his forge became a sanctuary. Even Apollo came to rest by its glow after long days of light. Artemis brought him antlers and feathers, which he turned into tools. Hestia, goddess of the hearth, sat beside him, sometimes in silence, both of them tending flame in their own way. The gods began to see what the sea had known all along. That brokenness is not the end, it is a beginning. Hephaestus, the divine smith, had returned, not to reclaim, but to create. And though Olympus had cast him away, he gave it gifts no thunderbolt ever could. Chapter 7. Beauty in the Broken Flame. Olympus shimmered brighter now, not from the light of the sun, nor the glint of golden armour, but from the soft, steady glow of a forge that never slept. The gods had grown used to the hum of the bellows, the quiet clang of hammer against heart-shaped metal. It echoed not across battlefields, but through gardens and halls, gentle and rhythmic, like a lullaby shaped in bronze. And at the centre of it all was Hephaestus, no longer the boy cast down, no longer the shadow in marble halls. He was not beautiful in the way gods are meant to be. His limbs still bore the marks of fall and flame, his walk still lilted like wind through reeds. But there was beauty in him now that even Aphrodite could not mimic, a beauty born of making, of healing, of quiet broken flame. His forge became a sanctuary, not just for tools and trinkets, but for gods themselves. Ares, god of war, came with battered armour. Hephaestus repaired it, but not quickly. Instead, he shaped new pieces slowly, pausing between each blow of the hammer, as if asking the god, "Why must you rush into battle so often?" Aphrodite came too, often. At first, for adornments, earrings that caught starlight, anklets that sang when she walked. But eventually, she stayed simply for the warmth. Not of the forge, of him. She watched his hands work. She listened to the silence he wove between creation and care. And though she was a goddess of beauty, she saw that beauty, true beauty, was not what adorned, but what endured. Hephaestus did not speak often, but when he did, the gods listened. His voice was not thunder. It did not command storms. It was like the sound of coals settling in a hearth, honest, steady, kind. He taught the gods to mend what was broken, not discard it. He taught them to wait, to shape things not for glory, but for grace. Even Hermes, who ran faster than thought, began to linger in the forge, watching tiny gears tick in the belly of bronze birds. And Athena, who prided herself on logic, sat in stillness, listening as Hephaestus explained how every blade he forged was balanced, not for war, but for fairness. He made gifts, yes, but never for favour, never for love. He gave as the fire gave, to warm, to soften, to light the way forward. Once he crafted a lantern that held a single eternal flame, small enough to fit in the palm, bright enough to lead someone home. He left it by the gates of Olympus. No name, no note, just a glow in the dark for whoever needed it. And yet, for all the peace he brought, Hephaestus remained apart, not exiled, but separate. His forge sat at the edge of Olympus, built not from polished ivory, but from black stone and glowing veins of iron. The gods came and went, but Hephaestus stayed. His joy was not in being seen, but in shaping what would outlast the seeing. He would wake before the sun touched the clouds and sit beside the flame, breathing with it. Sometimes he would run his fingers along old tools, the first hammer he'd shaped beneath the sea, a clamp made from coral and whale bone. He remembered where he came from, not with pain, but with peace. The forge had never lied to him. It had taken him in, flawed and limping and quiet, and said, "You are enough, let us begin." And so Hephaestus became the quiet heart of Olympus, not its crown, not its sword, its fire. He did not strike first in battle, he did not woo the heavens, but when the gods looked to build, to mend, to wonder, they came to him, not because he was useful, because he was true. They say that on quiet nights, when Olympus sleeps and the stars hum softly, you can still hear the ringing of his forge, a single tap, a gentle breath of bellows, a whisper of creation. And though the gods may rest, Hephaestus works on, not for praise, but because the world still needs beauty, born of broken things. Chapter 8. Sleep in the glow of the forge. The night on Olympus is not like the night in the mortal world. There is no true darkness. Instead, a soft hush falls over the marbled halls, as if the stars above draw a velvet curtain over the heavens, not to hide, but to cradle. Fountains murmur quietly. Wind moves like a sigh through olive trees, and at the mountain's edge, in a forge that glows with quiet fire, Hephaestus still works, but not with urgency, not with noise, with care. His hands move slowly now, not from age, for gods do not wither, but from wisdom. He knows that the finest work is done not in haste, but in stillness, a pendant shaped like a tear, filled with the shimmer of sunrise, a music box carved from driftwood that plays the sound of distant waves, a spoon for a goddess who had forgotten sweetness, its handle curled like the spiral of a sleeping shell. Each piece is a whisper, a kindness, a lullaby in the language of metal and fire. He no longer worries whether Olympus sees him. He does not measure his worth in praise, but in the breath of peace that follows each finished piece. He does not speak of the day he fell, nor the mother who let him go. He speaks only through the warmth of his forge, the songs he builds in silver and flame. The gods visit sometimes, but they come quietly. They sit on stools smoothed by time, watching embers dance in patterns only Hephaestus understands. And when they leave, they do so lighter than when they came. Even the fire has grown gentler now. It crackles not to consume, but to comfort. Its glow spills like honey across the stone floor, casting slow-moving shadows along the walls. Sometimes Hephaestus rests beside it, his tools set down, his shoulders relaxed, and when he dreams, it is of the sea, the arms that caught him, the coral beds that held his sorrow. He dreams of bubbles rising, of dolphins that laughed without judgment, of the first flicker of fire that said, "Welcome home." He wakes not to alarms, but to the warm breath of the forge, like a friend nudging gently, saying, "It's morning, let's begin again." There is no end to his work, but it does not tire him, because what he creates is not for glory, not for war, not even for the gods. It is for the quiet places in every soul that ache to be seen. In the mortal world, the name Hephaestus is often remembered for fire, for the forge, for the hammer. But in truth, his gift was gentleness, the kind of strength that bends, but does not break, the kind that shapes what others discard and makes it shine, the kind that takes what is crooked and finds the beauty in the curve. And so, when sleep calls to you tonight, know that somewhere, in the halls of Olympus or in the deep places of the sea, a forge still glows. Its fire is not fierce, it will not burn, it warms, it welcomes, it whispers. Rest now, you are not broken, you are becoming. The final embers flicker, the tools are laid gently to rest, and beneath a sky filled with golden stars, the divine smith dreams, not of thunder, not of thrones, but of firelight curling through the dark, soft as breath, slow as peace. Sleep now, dear dreamer, the forge will keep watch.